I found my daughter in the woods outside of town, barely alive. My mother-in-law did this, she said. I have dirty blood, the girl whispered, struggling to breathe. I drove her home, and later I wrote to my older brother. Now it is our turn. It is time to use what our grandfather taught us. This is a story based on real events. Hello, my dears. Put aside your chores for a minute. I want to tell a story that will help you look at your loved ones in a new way. Write in the comments where you are tuning in from. We wish you pleasant listening. October turned out to be cold. The dampness penetrated everywhere, creeping under my jacket, forcing me to wrap myself in an old wool scarf. I was returning from the farmer's market where I had bought the last apples of the season for jam. My old Chevy, a faithful assistant for 15 years, hummed with effort on the broken dirt road. In the thick twilight of the autumn evening, the road was barely visible, but I knew every pothole, every turn. These places had been my home all my life. I am Ruby Vance, a widow, a mother, and a grandmother. Many people in our county know me. I worked as a nurse at the rural hospital and retired 5 years ago. Now I tend to my garden, bake pies for my grandchildren, and make preserves for the winter. The ordinary life of an ordinary woman. Although people rarely called me ordinary, with my black hair hardly touched by gray even at 56, my dark skin and my deep, dark eyes, I always stood out here in the rural backwoods. Bad blood, they whispered behind my back, sometimes with admiration, more often with caution. And they were right. My grandmother was a proud black woman who married a white man, my grandfather, against her family's will. This story was passed down in the family like a legend about a great love that conquered prejudice. The phone in my jacket pocket erupted with a shrill ring, making me startle. It was an old push-button device, reliable with a powerful battery that didn't fail even in freezing temperatures. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. Hello? I pressed the phone to my ear, slowing down on a particularly bumpy stretch. Ruby Vance? A male voice, unfamiliar, out of breath. Yes, that's me. You need to come urgently. The woods behind the old quarry. Do you know where that is? My heart skipped a beat. I'm Sam, a hunter. I live across the river. I found your daughter. She's in bad shape. Very bad. She has her ID on her. Your number is listed as an emergency contact. The ground fell out from under my feet. I braked sharply. The car skidded on the wet clay. What's wrong with her? What happened? Beaten badly. She's conscious, but barely speaking. I called 911, but it'll take them a long time to get out here. Hurry. I turned the Chevy around right in the middle of the road, almost driving into the ditch. My hands were shaking, but my head was working clearly. The old quarry. That was about 7 miles north along a logging road. Only one thing was spinning in my head. Olivia, my baby girl, just hold on. My daughter is 32 years old. Beautiful, smart, stubborn. At 24, she married Gavin, the heir to a large construction company. She moved to the state capital into a luxurious mansion. She rarely called and visited even less. She always answered my questions about her life evasively. Everything is fine, Mom, don't worry. And I pretended to believe her, although my mother's heart sensed it. Not everything was smooth in her golden cage. The road to the quarry wound between thinning aspens and birches. The car shook over the potholes. I could barely manage the steering, but I didn't slow down. Thoughts raced through my head. Who could have beaten Olivia? A robbery? It couldn't be. Gavin always seemed calm, polite. True, his mother, Lucille Sterling, looked at me like empty space and viewed our family and our race as a stain she wanted to wipe off her precious son. Around the bend, the old quarry appeared, an abandoned sandy pit overgrown with young pines. A battered pickup truck stood on the shoulder with its doors open. A middle-aged man in a camouflage jacket was shifting from foot to foot nearby. I braked. Jumped out of the car, forgetting to turn off the engine.
Where is she? My voice cracked. There. He waved his hand toward the tree line. About 100 yards. I put my jacket under her and left a thermos of tea. I wanted to carry her, but I was afraid. What if there are fractures? I rushed in the indicated direction. My feet got stuck in the soil, soaked after the rain. Branches whipped my face. I stumbled, fell, got up, and ran again. Something light appeared between the trees. At first, I didn't recognize her. Her hair was matted with blood and dirt, her face swollen. There was a huge bruise under her eye. Her light coat from an expensive designer had turned into dirty rags. She lay on her side, curled up, just as she did in childhood when she was sick. "Olivia, baby." I dropped to my knees beside her, afraid to touch. She opened her eyes slightly. One was almost completely swollen shut. The other looked cloudy, unfocused. Her lips trembled in a weak smile, immediately replaced by a grimace of pain. "Mom, I'm here, honey. I'm here." I gently stroked her head, avoiding the obvious injuries.
"The ambulance is already coming. Just hold on, little one." She tried to sit up, but groaned in pain. I noticed one arm was twisted unnaturally, a fracture without a doubt. "Who did this?" My voice sounded unexpectedly firm. She licked her split lips and coughed. I helped her take a sip from the thermos the hunter had left. The warm tea seemed to give her strength. "Lucille Sterling," she whispered so quietly I could barely hear. "Your mother-in-law?" I couldn't believe my ears. Olivia nodded, wincing in pain. "My dirty blood, a disgrace to their family." Something snapped inside me. A rage I had never experienced before flooded my entire being. I knew Lucille despised us, despised Black people. But to beat a defenseless woman, her own daughter-in-law? "Mom," Olivia grabbed my hand. "No hospital. They have people everywhere." "Home." "What are you saying, honey? You need medical help." "No," there was panic in her eyes. "He will cover for her. Gavin is always on her side." I froze. Her husband wouldn't protect her from his own mother? But this was madness. Then I remembered Grandpa Nick, my father's father, a Vietnam vet, a man with an iron will and a piercing gaze. He often said, "Ruby, if a situation seems insane, look for what isn't visible on the surface." At that moment, the wail of a siren was heard somewhere in the distance, the ambulance. I had to decide immediately. What happened, Olivia? Why did she do this? My daughter swallowed, wincing from pain. "I found documents in Gavin's safe. She's stealing money from the charity foundation, millions meant for sick children." Every word was difficult for her. I asked her directly. She turned pale, then suggested we drive out of town to look at a new plot of land, said she would explain everything. The picture was gradually coming together. Olivia had discovered something compromising, likely by accident, and Lucille Sterling, the director of a large charity foundation, a respected lady in the city, decided to get rid of an inconvenient witness. By whose hands? Mercenaries or herself? "Herself," Olivia whispered as if reading my thoughts. "She drove me here in her SUV, said it didn't matter. No one would believe me, not with my background." The siren was getting closer. The medics would be here soon. The right thing would be to send my daughter to the hospital, call the police, file a report. That if her husband's family really had such connections, if he was on his mother's side, they could silence Olivia forever. The decision came instantly, as if a switch flipped in my head. "Did the hunter see who brought you?" I asked. "No, she left. She thought I would die here from the cold and injuries." I got to my feet and ran back to the road. The hunter was still there, smoking, leaning against his truck. "Sam, right?" I approached him. "Did you see who dropped her off?" "No," he shook his head. "I was hunting mushrooms, stumbled upon her by accident. It was already getting dark." "Listen," I spoke quickly, afraid the ambulance would arrive before I could explain everything. "My daughter is in danger. This is a family matter. I'm taking her home. I'll provide aid myself. I'm a medic." He frowned, looking at me doubtfully. "Lady, she needs serious help. She might have internal injuries." "I know," I lowered my voice. "Her mother-in-law did this. She has connections everywhere, including the hospital. If Olivia ends up there, they will silence her, or worse." His eyes widened in surprise.
Then understanding appeared in them. "You want me to tell the medics it was a false alarm, that you made a mistake, and I'll take my daughter?" He looked at me for a long time, then nodded. "I feel you aren't lying, but if she gets worse, I'm a nurse with 30 years of experience," I repeated, "and I am a mother." He nodded once more, then started brushing off his jacket. "Go to your daughter. I'll handle the ambulance." I squeezed his hand in a silent thank you and ran back to Olivia. The wail of the siren was becoming louder. "Let's go, honey." I carefully helped her sit up. "We'll get to the car now. And the ambulance." She could barely hold her head up. I canceled the call. I lied. "We'll handle it ourselves." She didn't argue. I gently helped her up, threw her healthy arm over my shoulder. Olivia groaned in pain, but moved forward, leaning on me. We walked slowly to the road, avoiding the spot where the hunter remained.
Through the trees, the flashing lights of the ambulance were already visible. We reached my Chevy. I settled my daughter into the front seat, fastened the seatbelt, trying not to touch her injured arm. I went around the car, got behind the wheel, and quietly pulled away. I didn't turn on the headlights until we had driven a sufficient distance from the quarry. "That's it," I said when we drove out onto a more decent paved road. "Home now." Olivia closed her eyes, leaning back against the seat. In the dim light of the dashboard, her face looked gray. "Mom, they won't stop," she whispered. "Now I know too much." "We'll come up with something." I tried to make my voice sound confident, although inside everything was shaking with fear and rage. "The main thing is you're alive." Olivia suddenly grabbed my hand, forcing me to loosen my grip on the steering wheel for a moment. "Mom, I have proof," she said unexpectedly firmly.
"The documents? I managed to photograph them on my phone before we drove off." My heart leaped. "Where is the phone?" "In my bag. She didn't take it. Apparently, she decided it would look like a robbery." I nodded. My thoughts were working with crystal clarity. We needed to hide Olivia where they wouldn't look for her, treat her wounds, contact someone who could help deal with the situation. An image floated up in my memory immediately. Marcus, my older brother, ex-military, just like our grandfather, tough, a man of few words, reliable as a rock. He lived in the neighboring county, worked for a private security firm, and unlike me, hadn't lost touch with the skills Grandpa had taught us. "Olivia," I turned to my daughter, "you have to tell me everything from the beginning, but first we will contact Uncle Marcus. Remember him?" She nodded weakly. "The one who taught me to shoot a slingshot." "Exactly," I tried to smile. "He will help us." We drove in the dark along deserted country roads. Ahead was my house, wooden, old but sturdy, and in the attic, under a layer of dust, stood a trunk that my brother and I had brought after Grandpa died. A trunk with things that might prove more useful than I had thought all these years. I took out my phone and without slowing down, typed a message to my brother. "Marcus, need your help. Remember what Grandpa Nick taught us? Now is our turn." We reached my house on the outskirts of the village when night had finally taken over. The stars spilled out onto the sky, bright and cold. The October air smelled of decaying leaves and the first frosts. The old log house met us with silence. I helped Olivia out of the car, almost carrying her onto the porch. She could barely move her legs, but held on stoically. My girl had always been strong. In childhood, falling off a bicycle, she would get up silently, wipe her knees, and ride on. But now, even she was struggling. "Just a moment, honey, just a moment." I sat her on the sofa in the living room and rushed to the fireplace. It was chilly in the house. I had left in the morning and hadn't had time to heat it. I skillfully started a fire with prepared wood chips and birch logs. Soon the fire crackled merrily, casting reflections on my daughter's pale face. "Let's look at your wounds," I said, turning on the table lamp. In the bright light, Olivia looked even worse. The bruise under her eye was rapidly turning black. Her lip was split, a deep scratch on her cheek. I carefully helped her take off her coat. Every movement caused her to groan. Under her thin blouse, bruises were visible. Her right arm hung limply. "Fracture," I stated, gently palpating the wrist. "Most likely simple, without displacement. Need to immobilize it." My first aid kit had everything necessary. 30 years working as a nurse weren't for nothing. I treated all visible wounds with antiseptic, applied a splint to her wrist, gave her painkillers and anti-inflammatories. "Thank you, Mom," Olivia whispered when I finished. "You always know what to do."
I smiled bitterly. Did I? My only daughter lay before me, beaten, broken, and the enemy wasn't some street thug, but a powerful businesswoman with massive connections. What could I oppose against her money and influence? The phone? I remembered. You mentioned evidence. Olivia pointed to her bag. Expensive leather with gold hardware. Inside, I found the latest model iPhone in a cracked case. The screen, fortunately, was intact. Code 1-1989, Olivia said. The year you moved into this house. I unlocked the phone, involuntarily noting that for her password, she chose a date important to both of us. Despite the luxurious life in her husband's mansion, she hadn't forgotten her roots. Gallery, she prompted. Folder, documents for Gavin. I found the folder. Dozens of photos of accounting reports, payment orders, contracts. At first glance, ordinary business papers. But I understood that Olivia had seen something important in them, something for which Lucille Sterling had taken such a risk. Explain what's here, I asked, sitting down next to my daughter. The Hope Foundation, Olivia began quietly. Lucille is its director and founder. Every year, tens of millions of dollars pass through the foundation for the treatment of sick children, for supporting nursing homes, for building playgrounds. Everything official, everything transparent. She paused to sip water from the cup I handed her. 2 weeks ago, Gavin asked me to help with documents for the foundation's annual report. He's on the board of trustees, but honestly never really looked into it, just signed where his mom pointed. I nodded. That was in Gavin's spirit. Handsome, charming, but an absolutely spineless man living his whole life at his mother's direction. I started going through the documents and noticed something strange. Large sums from 5 to 15 million were regularly transferred to accounts of firms with names like Consulting Inc. or Business Analytics for consulting services, legal support, analytics. But there were no detailed reports on these services, and when I looked for information on the firms themselves, shell companies, I guessed. Created for money laundering. Exactly, Olivia nodded. I checked the databases. They were all registered shortly before receiving money from the foundation. The founders, people with lost passports, deceased, or completely unaware of their participation.
Classic straw man. And the money? The money went to accounts in offshore zones. And you asked your mother-in-law about this? I shook my head. Olivia, didn't you realize how dangerous that was? I realized. She smiled weakly with broken lips. But I decided to give her a chance to explain. I'm a member of the family after all. Thought maybe there was some reasonable explanation. I sighed. My naive, kind girl always believed in the best in people, even when the evidence spoke to the contrary. And what did she say? Nothing. Olivia grimaced in pain. At first, she turned pale, then pulled herself together, said I misunderstood everything, that it was a complex financial scheme for tax optimization, completely legal, and then suggested we drive out of town, said she would explain everything in detail without prying ears. And you went? Yes, she lowered her eyes. Stupid, right? But I thought she was still my husband's mother, the grandmother of my future child. I froze. You? Olivia nodded, covering her stomach with her healthy hand. 12 weeks. We hadn't told anyone yet. Wanted to wait for the second trimester. Gavin was so happy. My heart squeezed with pain and rage. Lucille Sterling beat a pregnant woman, her own daughter-in-law who was carrying her grandchild, and all because of money? She knew about the baby? Yes, Olivia swallowed. I told her in the car. I thought it would stop her, but she laughed, said that with my dirty blood, I have no place in their family, that my child would spoil their impeccable lineage. I closed my eyes to hold back tears of rage. My grandmother, despite the color of her skin and the prejudice she faced, was a highly educated woman, played the piano, and raised a family of patriots. And this arrogant upstart? She stopped the car near the woods, Olivia continued in a quiet voice. Said she wanted to show me the plot they were buying. We got out, and then I didn't even have time to understand what was happening. She hit me with something heavy on the head. A tire iron from the trunk, I think. And then trembling, remembering. She was like a lunatic, kept repeating about my blood, about how I wanted to destroy their family, disgrace them, take their money. I hugged my daughter, trying not to touch the injured places. She buried her face in my shoulder and cried silently. She would have killed me if not for a phone call, whispered Olivia. Someone called her.
She got distracted, started saying she was already coming, that everything was in order, and then just got in the car and left. Left me to die from the cold and wounds. The phone in my pocket vibrated. A message from my brother. Leaving now. We'll be there by morning. Don't call anyone. Turn off the phones. They can track them. I felt a surge of relief. Marcus was always a reliable rearguard. If anyone knew what to do in such a situation, it was him. Your phone needs to be turned off, I told Olivia. And mine too, in the car, she suddenly remembered. Under the seat. Gavin insisted on repairing your Chevy at their service center 3 months ago. They could have... I understood immediately. A tracker. They had been watching me all this time. Wait here. I got up and headed for the door. Outside, it had gotten even colder. The stars seemed especially bright in the moonless sky. I crouched down near the car, shined the flashlight from my phone under the chassis, and indeed, a small black box attached to the frame under the driver's seat. I ripped it off, examined it. A professional GPS tracker. Returning to the house, I put the device on the table. You were right, I told my daughter. They were watching me. They know where you live. Olivia tried to sit up straighter, but winced in pain. We need to leave here. I shook my head. No, that would be logical, but that's what they expect. We will stay here. Marcus will arrive soon, and we will decide what to do next. I took the battery out of Olivia's mobile, then turned off my phone as well. We could no longer be tracked. In the meantime, I walked over to the old dresser and pulled out the bottom drawer. We'll need this. From under a stack of old sweaters, I pulled out a worn holster with a pistol. My grandfather's.
Service 1911, which he had officially registered back in the day. I kept the permit current, although I hadn't taken the weapon out once in all these years. Do you know how? Olivia opened her eyes wide. Yes, I checked the magazine, the safety. Grandpa taught me, and Marcus refreshed my skills a couple of years ago. I placed the pistol on the table next to the tracker. 2 symbols of our new situation. We were prey, but prey that could fight back. Olivia leaned back on the pillows I had placed behind her back. Her face was exhausted, but something new appeared in her eyes. Not just fear, but determination. We need a plan, she said. I have the documents, but that's not enough. They can deny everything, say I forged them or misinterpreted them. Marcus will help. I sat down next to her. He knows people who have access to databases. If we can trace the movement of money, it's not that simple. Olivia shook her head. The scheme is complex. Shell companies, offshore accounts. It takes time and resources we don't have. Then we'll have to act differently. I looked thoughtfully out the window. Behind the glass, the darkness thickened, becoming almost tangible. Somewhere out there, 100 miles away, in a luxurious mansion on the riverbank, sat a woman who tried to kill my daughter, who despised us for our race, who thought she could go unpunished thanks to money and connections. Tell me everything you know about Lucille Sterling, I asked, about her habits, fears, weaknesses. Why? Olivia shuddered. You're not going to. No, I shook my head. We won't stoop to her level, but we need to understand who we are dealing with. Olivia looked at me for a long time, then nodded. She fears exposure more than anything in the world, she began. Her reputation is her god. The charity foundation, social projects, interviews in glossy magazines, it's all her way of showing herself in a certain light. In reality, what about her husband, your father-in-law? Arthur Sterling, Olivia laughed joylessly. A big businessman, head of a holding company. In public, a model family man, father and husband. In reality, he lives separately, has a mistress younger than me, and never interferes in his wife's affairs, provided she doesn't create problems for the business. And Gavin, your husband. Olivia's face twisted with pain, and I realized it wasn't a physical injury. Mom, he loves me, honestly, but he will always be on his mother's side. He grew fused with her by an umbilical cord that no one cut. He's 40 years old, and he still calls her to find out what tie to wear to a meeting. I squeezed her healthy hand. Is that why you don't want to go back? Yes, she lowered her eyes. If I end up in the hospital, Gavin will take me home, and there Lucille will finish what she started, and no one will stop her. A heavy sigh escaped my chest. My girl had fallen into a golden cage from which she could not escape now. We need to turn to someone Lucille can't silence, I said, thinking aloud. Someone she fears or cannot control. Olivia thought for a moment, then her eyes widened. Arthur Sterling, she whispered, her husband. She can do whatever she wants as long as it doesn't harm the business.
But if a scandal with the foundation surfaces, it will hit the holding company's reputation, I picked up, and then he will intervene. Yes, Olivia nodded. He's not the most pleasant person, but he's a pragmatist. If choosing between his wife and business, he will choose business, I finished. Good thought. But how to get to him? Surely he's surrounded by security and secretaries. I have his personal number, Olivia smiled weakly. Gavin called him in front of me once. I memorized it. Never thought it would come handy. I nodded. The plan was beginning to take shape. But first, let's wait for Marcus. I looked at the clock. He had another 6 hours to drive. You need to rest. I helped my daughter lie down more comfortably, adjusted the pillows. Her eyelids were growing heavy. The effect of painkillers and the tension of the last few hours was taking its toll. Mom? She caught my hand as I was about to leave the room. Thank you. For what, daughter? For not asking why I married such a weakling, she smiled bitterly. For not saying, I warned you. I leaned over and kissed her forehead. We all make mistakes, honey. The main thing is to fix them before it's too late. When she fell asleep, I went out onto the porch. The night was cold and clear. The stars, bright and dispassionate, looked at me from above. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. I inhaled the frosty air deeply. I thought about my grandmother, Zora, a proud, black woman who, despite the strict social codes of her time, lived with her head held high, about her pride and strength, which she passed on to my mother, and from her to me, about the dirty blood Lucille despised so much. Today, that blood boiled, and it would rage until justice triumphed, not for revenge, but for the protection of my daughter and her unborn child. The tracker I removed from the car was still working, blinking a small red light. I put it on a stump near the house. Let them think I'm here. Let them come. I will be ready. And the baby?